the heart of the vibrant kingdom of Benin, there lived a woman named Chichi. She was known for her beautiful smile that could rival the sunrise, and her wit that could outsmart the craftiest of traders. However, Chichi had a flaw. She was hopelessly in love with the dashing Prince Osaboo. Now, Prince Osaboo was a sight to behold, with his regal bearing and a smile that could melt even the coldest of hearts. But alas, his heart belonged to another, the lovely Princess Amina from a neighboring kingdom. Undeterred by this inconvenient fact, Chichi decided to win Prince Osaboo's affection by any means necessary. She concocted elaborate schemes to catch his eye, from attending every royal banquet to sending him baskets filled with fruits, yams, cassavas, and sweet potatoes, which everyone in the kingdom knew was his favorite dish. But Prince Osaboo remained oblivious to Chichi's advances, much to her dismay. His attention was solely focused on Princess Amina, who seemed to float on clouds whenever he was near. Princess Amina, the object of Prince Osaboo's affections, was a woman of grace, intelligence, and unwavering determination. She commanded respect and admiration wherever she went. She was not a typical damsel in distress. Princess Amina was more likely to be found wielding a sword and leading her troops into battle than waiting idly for a prince to come to her rescue. She was a fierce warrior with a heart as brave as a lion's roar, fiercely loyal to her kingdom and its people. But she also possessed a softer side, one that was revealed only to those she held dear. She had a wicked sense of humor that could brighten even the darkest of days, often regaling her companions with tales of her misadventures and mishaps on the battlefield. Despite her formidable reputation, Princess Amina was also a hopeless romantic at heart, yearning for a love that was as strong as the steel of her sword. And though her heart belonged to Prince Osaboo, she refused to be won over by grand gestures or empty words, knowing that true love could only be earned through honesty, loyalty, and unwavering devotion. She was a beacon of hope in troubled times, a guiding light for those who sought justice and righteousness in a world filled with darkness and deceit. Chichi, knowing all these about Princess Amina, determined to catch the eye of Prince Osaboo. She embarked on a series of increasingly elaborate schemes that could rival the antics of the kingdom's most cunning tricksters. First, she decided to show that she was a great baker. She baked for Prince Osaboo a cake shaped like a majestic elephant, hoping to impress him with her skills in the kitchen. However, her masterpiece ended up resembling more of a squashed antelope than an elephant, leaving the palace guards scratching their heads in confusion. Undeterred, Chichi then turned to the art of dance, believing that a graceful performance would surely capture the prince's attention. With the agility of a gazelle, she twirled and spun in the royal courtyard, only to trip over her own feet and crash into a startled group of musicians, sending drums flying in all directions. Not one to be discouraged by a few minor setbacks, Chichi decided to compose a song that would declare her undying love for the prince. She wrote the song on a scroll, only for the ink to spill all over the papyrus, transforming her heartfelt declaration into a soggy mess of black smudges. Desperate times called for desperate measures, and so Chichi resorted to the oldest trick in the book, enlisting the help of a mischievous parrot named Coco. She taught Coco to recite love hymns in the prince's presence, hoping that his charming squawks would sway the prince's heart. But alas, Coco's failed and his verses ended up sounding more like a drunk villager than a musician. Despite her best efforts, Prince Osaboo remained oblivious to Chichi's advances, leaving her feeling more frustrated than a cat chasing its own tail. As days turned into weeks, Chichi found herself unable to shake off the jealousy that was eating her up. Every time she saw Princess Amina and Prince Osaboo sharing a laugh or exchanging a glance, a pang of jealousy shot through her like a lightning bolt. She tried to distract herself with various activities, like weaving, to attempting to train a group of unruly palace cats, but nothing could quell the burning envy that consumed her from within. One particularly sunny afternoon, Chichi stumbled upon Princess Amina and Prince Osaboo enjoying a stroll through the palace gardens. Unable to contain her jealousy any longer, she decided to confront them head-on, determined to put an end to their seemingly perfect union. "There you are, my dear prince and princess," Chichi exclaimed, her voice dripping with false cheerfulness as she approached the couple. How delightful it is to see you both enjoying each other's company so thoroughly." Prince Osaboo raised an eyebrow in confusion, while Princess Amina regarded Chichi with a strange expression. "Thank you, Chichi," Princess Amina replied. Chichi then continued, "I simply couldn't help but notice the special bond you two share, and I must admit, it fills me with admiration." Prince Osaboo exchanged a puzzled glance with Princess Amina, sensing the underlying tension in Chichi's words. "Well, we're certainly glad to hear that, Chichi," he said cautiously, "but perhaps it's best if you allow us to continue our stroll in peace." And with that, Prince Osaboo gently ushered Princess Amina away, leaving Chichi to seethe in her own jealousy-fueled rage. She watched keenly as the couple disappeared into the distance. As jealousy continued to gnaw at Chichi's heart like a persistent mosquito, she found herself concocting increasingly elaborate and, dare I say, ridiculous plans to undermine Princess Amina's relationship with Prince Osaboo. One moonlit night, as Chichi sat brooding in her room, an idea struck her like a bolt of lightning. With a wicked gleam in her eye, she began to devise a cunning scheme to sabotage Princess Amina's reputation and drive a wedge between her and the unsuspecting prince. Her first plan involved enlisting the help of the kingdom's most notorious gossipmongers to spread horrible rumors about Princess Amina's alleged infidelity. Chichi believed that if she could tarnish the princess's reputation, Prince Osaboo would surely see her in a different light. But alas, her plan was foiled when the gossipmongers refused to participate, citing their unwavering loyalty to Princess Amina. Undeterred, Chichi decided to take matters into her own hands and resort to more direct methods of sabotage. She plotted to sneak into Princess Amina's chambers under the cover of darkness and plant false evidence of her supposed cheating, hoping to incite doubt and suspicion in Prince Osaboo's mind. However, her wicked plan was thwarted when she tripped over her own feet while attempting to pick the lock to Princess Amina's room, alerting the palace guards to her presence. Undeterred by her repeated failures, Chichi grew increasingly desperate in her quest to drive a wedge between Princess Amina and Prince Osaboo. She also considered staging a fake kidnapping of the princess, as well as casting a love spell on Prince Osaboo in a misguided attempt to make him forget about his true love. But each time she concocted a new scheme, fate intervened in the most comical of ways, leaving Chichi humiliated and defeated at every turn. Chichi, driven by desperation and fueled by her unrelenting jealousy, sought out the services of a mysterious witch doctor rumored to possess the power to create love potions capable of bending even the strongest of hearts to one's will. With trembling hands and a heart heavy with longing, Chichi approached the witch doctor's hut under the cover of night, her mind filled with visions of a future where Prince Osaboo would finally be hers and hers alone. The witch doctor, an old woman with eyes as dark as midnight and a voice like the whisper of the wind, listened intently to Chichi's tale of unrequited love and jealousy. With a knowing smile, she promised to make a potent love potion that would make Prince Osaboo fall madly and deeply in love with her. Indeed, the witch doctor woman made the love potion and assured Chichi that it would work, if only she made sure to read the instructions that were written on the bottle. As the sun set, Chichi hurried to the palace. Her heart raced with anticipation as she clutched the vial containing the ill-fated love potion. With the palace gates set to close at 11, she knew she had to act quickly to ensure her plan was set in motion before it was too late. With a sense of urgency bordering on desperation, Chichi rushed to Prince Osaboo's chambers, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridors of the palace. After all, everyone knew that she was the general's daughter, so the guards weren't going to stop her, or do rather checking. Chichi had meticulously rehearsed her speech, for the witch doctor had told her to tell the prince that the potion would help make his mind sharper. Who doesn't want a sharper mind after all? But as she arrived at Prince Osaboo's door, her excitement reached fever pitch and she fumbled with the vial in her trembling hands. In her haste to execute her plan before the gates closed, she failed to read the small inscription on the bottle indicating the potion's optimal administration time, midnight. With a deep breath to steady her nerves, Chichi knocked on the prince's door, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Prince Osaboo, surprised by her unexpected visit, greeted her with a puzzled expression, unaware of the turmoil brewing within her troubled heart. With a forced smile, Chichi presented the vial to Prince Osaboo, her voice quivering with nervous excitement, declaring to him that the contents would be beneficial. With a shrug and a curious glance, Prince Osaboo obliged, taking a sip of the mysterious liquid before setting the vial aside. Little did Chichi know that her impulsive decision to administer the potion 2 hours ahead of schedule would set off a chain of events that would forever alter the course of her fate and the lives of those around her. As the night wore on, the effects of the love potion began to take hold, but instead of bending Prince Osaboo's heart to Chichi's will, it only served to strengthen his love for Princess Amina. That small mistake she made was enough to alter the potion's intended effects. With a vial of the potion clutched tightly in her trembling hands, Chichi made her way back home, her heart pounding with anticipation and dread. But as the potion took effect, Chichi's worst fears were realized. Instead of falling in love with her as she had hoped, Prince Osaboo's affection for Princess Amina grew stronger and more profound with each passing moment. He showered her with gifts and declarations of undying love, leaving Chichi to watch in helpless despair as her carefully laid plans crumbled around her. In a cruel twist of fate, the love potion had backfired spectacularly. Chichi's heart sank like a stone into the depths of despair as she grappled with the realization that her misguided actions had not only failed to win Prince Osaboo's love, but had also driven a deeper wedge between them. Her once burning passion for the prince now became a cold, bitter resentment. No longer able to bear the sight of Prince Osaboo or the painful reminder of her own folly, Chichi withdrew into the shadows, avoiding his presence at all costs. Her once bright spirit became dimmed by the weight of her own actions. Prince Osaboo, oblivious to Chichi's internal turmoil, continued on with his daily duties and royal obligations, his attention focused solely on Princess Amina and the affairs of the kingdom. He paid little to zero attention to Chichi, her presence fading into the background like a forgotten whisper in the wind. As days turned into weeks, Chichi's depression deepened, like a dark cloud looming over her every waking moment. She found solace in solitude, spending more time at home, wallowing in her own misery without fear of judgment or scorn. One sunny day, all of a sudden, as Chichi was sitting in their living room, she had a clever idea, or so she thought. She would get into Prince Osaboo's room, under the cover of darkness. With a determined smile on her face, she came up with a daring plan to distract the palace guards and gain access to the prince's bedroom. Under the cloak of night, Chichi set her plan into motion, employing every trick at her disposal to divert the attention of the vigilant guards stationed outside the prince's chambers. With a combination of sweet words, coy glances, and a well-timed flutter of her eyelashes, she succeeded in luring the guards away from their posts, leaving Prince Osaboo's bedchamber vulnerable to her intrusion. With bated breath and trembling hands, Chichi slipped silently into the prince's bedchamber, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Her heart pounded with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Finally reaching the prince's bed, Chichi hesitated for a moment, her hand hovering over the covers like a hesitant moth drawn to a flame. With a deep breath to steady her nerves, she slipped under the covers, praying that Prince Osaboo remained fast asleep and unaware of her presence. Meanwhile, outside the prince's chambers, one of Princess Amina's friends happened to be passing by. Peering through the crack in the door, she stifled a gasp as she caught sight of Chichi slipping into the prince's bed like a thief in the night. Suppressing a giggle, the friend quickly pulled out her scroll and quill, jotting down a hasty note to share the juicy gossip with a fellow friend. Back inside the bedchamber, Chichi held her breath as she waited for the inevitable consequences of her impulsive actions. But to her relief, Prince Osaboo remained blissfully unaware, his snores echoing softly in the quiet room like a lullaby. Satisfied that her mission was complete, Chichi carefully got out from the bed, making sure not to disturb the sleeping prince. With a final glance around the room to ensure that no evidence of her nocturnal escapade remained, she slipped out the door and disappeared into the shadows like a phantom in the night. The next morning, as Chichi went about her business in the palace, she couldn't help but notice the whispers and pointed glances that followed her every move. Ignoring the prying eyes and wagging tongues, she walked the grounds with pride and a twinkle in her eye. And as she passed by Princess Amina's chambers, she couldn't help but see the look that was on Princess Amina's face. a look of sadness and betrayal. 3 weeks later, Chichi visited Princess Amina. Her heart pounded with nervous anticipation as she stood before Princess Amina's chambers, steeling herself for the difficult conversation that lay ahead. With a deep breath to steady her nerves, she knocked on the door, her palms sweaty with anxiety. As the door swung open, revealing Princess Amina's regal figure framed in the soft glow of candlelight, Chichi felt a pang of guilt, which quickly disappeared. She had to do this. This was the only way. Chichi, Princess Amina greeted her with a warm smile. How strange of you to visit me. Chichi, with a wicked smile on her face. Princess Amina, she began, her words measured and deliberate. I have something of great importance to tell you. Please, may I come in? Curiosity mingled with concern in Princess Amina's eyes as she ushered Chichi into her chambers, her mind racing with 1,000 questions and fears. She motioned for Chichi to take a seat, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. With a deep breath to steady her nerves, Chichi launched into her carefully crafted tale of deception, weaving a web of lies so elaborate and intricate that even she found it difficult to keep track of her lies. Princess Amina, she began, her voice trembling with feigned sorrow, I regret to inform you that 9 months from now, I will have Prince Osaboo's child. Princess Amina's eyes widened in shock and disbelief, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a gasp of horror. What do you mean? She stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Chichi pressed on, her heart heavy with guilt but her resolve unwavering. It pains me to say this, but about 3 weeks ago, the prince asked to see me. He wanted me to deliver a message to my father, the general. Osaboo was so drunk that night that he took advantage of me. She confessed, her voice quavering with false emotion. You know, I've always liked him. In fact, I've always loved him, and that night, I realized that he had feelings for me too. A strangled sob escaped Princess Amina's lips as she recoiled in horror, her world spinning out of control with the weight of Adesawa's deceit. No, it can't be true, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the pounding of her own heart. But deep down, Princess Amina knew that Chichi's words rang true, no matter how much she wished to deny them. And as the full weight of her betrayal settled over her like a suffocating blanket, she felt her heart shatter into 1,000,000 irreparable pieces. In that moment of profound despair, Princess Amina knew that her world would never be the same again, that the trust she had placed in Prince Osaboo had been cruelly shattered by the harsh reality of deceit. And as Chichi watched the princess crumble before her, she almost let out a scream, not one of pain but of sheer happiness. Her plan had worked. As days turned into weeks, Princess Amina began to ignore the prince. As the weight of the prince's deceit settled over Princess Amina like a suffocating fog, she withdrew into a shell of numbness, her heart heavy with the burden of betrayal. The once bright spark in her eyes dimmed with each passing day, replaced by a hollow emptiness that threatened to consume her from within. In her anguish and despair, Princess Amina found solace in solitude, retreating to the sanctuary of her chambers where she could wallow in her own misery without fear of judgment or scorn. She shut herself off from the outside world, erecting walls around her shattered heart to shield herself from further pain. But even as she withdrew from the world around her, Princess Amina's absence did not go unnoticed by Prince Osaboo, who grew increasingly concerned by her sudden and unexplained disappearance. With each passing day, his worry deepened, like a shadow creeping across his troubled mind. Where is Princess Amina? Prince Osaboo wondered aloud, his brow furrowed with concern as he sought answers to the mystery that had consumed his thoughts. But try as he might, he could not get Princess Amina to come to his chamber. He sent guard after guard to summon the princess to him, but she flatly refused to meet him. She insisted that she was busy or had a series of commitments. Meanwhile, Princess Amina remained hidden away in her chambers, lost in a haze of grief and despair. She could not bear to face Prince Osaboo, to look into his eyes and see the reflection of her own pain mirrored back at her. Princess Amina finally came back to herself and decided that she would confront the prince. One day, she found herself face to face with Prince Osaboo, her heart skipping a beat at the sight of him. Prince Osaboo, She greeted him with a forced smile, her voice trembling with a mixture of sadness and resentment. Prince Osaboo's eyes widened in surprise at the unexpected encounter, his heart quickening with a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Princess Amina," he replied, his voice tinged with concern. "It's been too long. Where have you been hiding all this time?" Princess Amina's forced smile faded, replaced by a look of weary resignation. "Hiding, indeed," she muttered under her breath, her gaze drifting away from his stare. Sensing her distress, Prince Osaboo stepped closer, his brow furrowed with concern. "Is everything all right, Amina?" he asked, his voice soft with genuine concern. Princess Amina's eyes flashed with anger as she met Prince Osage's gaze head-on, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. "Don't pretend, Osaboo," she snapped, her words laced with bitterness. "I know what you've done." Prince Osaboo recoiled in shock at the accusation, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What do you mean?" he stammered, his voice tinged with confusion. Princess Amina's lip curled in a sneer of disgust as she delivered her damning accusation. "You impregnated Chichi," she spat, her words hanging in the air like a thundercloud ready to burst. "Chichi is carrying your child." Prince Osaboo's jaw dropped in stunned silence at the accusation, his mind reeling with disbelief. "That's absurd," he protested, his voice rising with indignation. "I would never betray you, Amina. You must believe me." But Princess Amina's heart was hardened with the pain of betrayal, her trust shattered beyond repair. "Save your lies for someone who cares," she retorted, her voice dripping with scorn. "I trusted you, Osaboo. I loved you. And this is how you repay me?" With a heavy heart and a sense of resignation, Princess Amina turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Prince Osaboo standing alone in the empty corridor, scratching his head in confusion, wondering what in the world was going on. In that moment, he knew that he had lost not only Princess Amina's trust, but also the love and respect that he had once held so dear. As Princess Amina's footsteps echoed down the corridor, Prince Osaboo scrambled to catch up with her, his heart pounding with a mix of desperation and regret. "Wait, Amina, please," he called out, his voice tinged with desperation as he reached out to grasp her arm. Princess Amina stopped in her tracks, her eyes flashing with a mixture of anger and hurt as she turned to face Prince Osaboo once more. "What more is there to say, Osaboo?" she demanded, her voice cold and distant. "I need to understand, Amina," he pleaded, his voice trembling with emotion. "How did you come to believe such a terrible accusation?" "My friend saw Chichi leaving your bedroom," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Prince Osaboo's heart plummeted at the revelation, his mind racing with a million thoughts and fears. "But that's impossible," he protested, his voice tinged with desperation. "I swear to you, Amina, nothing happened between Chichi and me. You have to believe me." "Why should I believe you?" she challenged, her voice laced with bitterness. "You've already broken my trust, Osaboo. How can I ever trust you again?" "I don't know, Amina," he said, "but I swear to you, on everything I hold dear, I did not betray you with Chichi. I am not lying, my dear princess. Like our forefathers used to say, the end of a cow is beef, and the end of a lie is grief. I have always lived my life following that." The following morning, Princess Amina made her way to Chichi's chambers, her heart heavy with determination and anger. She would confront Chichi head-on and demand the truth, no matter the cost. As she reached Chichi's door, Princess Amina knocked firmly, her knuckles rapping against the wood in a steady rhythm. A moment later, the door swung open, revealing Adesawa's surprised expression. "What brings you here?" Chichi asked. Princess Amina's expression was stern as she met Adesawa's gaze head-on, her voice cold and commanding. "I need to speak with you, Chichi," she said firmly, her tone brooking no argument. "Of course, Princess," she replied, her voice tinged with nervousness. "Please come in." As Princess Amina entered Chichi's home, she wasted no time in getting straight to the point. "I need you to take a pregnancy test, Chichi," she declared, her voice firm and unwavering. Chichi's eyes widened in shock at the demand, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts and fears. "A pregnancy test?" she stammered, her voice tinged with disbelief. Why on earth would you ask me to do such a thing? Because my friend saw you leaving Prince Osaboo's bedroom, she replied, her voice cold and accusatory. And now, I need to know the truth. I refuse, Chichi declared, her voice ringing with defiance. I will not subject myself to such humiliation and indignity. Princess Amina's jaw clenched with frustration at Chichi's refusal, her patience wearing thin. You will do as I say, Chichi, she snapped, her voice tinged with anger. I will not rest until I have the truth, no matter what it takes. But Chichi remained unmoved, her resolve unwavering in the face of Princess Amina's relentless interrogation. I will not take the test, Princess, she declared, her voice defiant. And there is nothing you can do to make me. But despite the frustration, Princess Amina refused to give up hope. She knew that she needed to find a way to prove Chichi's deceit once and for all, no matter the obstacles in her path. Determined to uncover the truth, Princess Amina sought out the guidance of a diviner, a wise and revered elder known for their ability to peer beyond the veil of reality and into the realm of the unseen. As she sat before the diviner, her heart heavy with anticipation, Princess Amina laid bare the truth of her troubled heart, recounting the events that had led her to this moment of uncertainty and despair. The diviner listened intently to Princess Amina's story, and after what felt like an eternity of silence, as the diviner moved sacred pebbles from one place to another, she finally spoke, her voice soft but filled with certainty. Chichi is not pregnant, the diviner declared, their words ringing out like a beacon of hope in the darkness. Her deceit runs deep, but the truth will always reveal itself in the end. Princess Amina's heart soared with relief at the diviner's words. Armed with this newfound knowledge, she knew that she could finally confront Chichi with the truth and put an end to her deception once and for all. With a renewed sense of purpose and determination, Princess Amina set out to confront Chichi with the diviner's revelation, knowing that the battle for truth and justice was far from over, but that she would face it with courage and conviction, no matter the cost. Princess Amina rushed to Chichi's home, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of exhilaration at the prospect of finally uncovering the truth. Finding Chichi pacing nervously outside her home, Princess Amina wasted no time in confronting her with the diviner's verdict. Chichi, it's time to come clean, she declared. Chichi's eyes widened in shock at the princess's statement, her heart sinking with the weight of impending confession. Princess Amina, she stammered. But before Chichi could utter another word, Princess Amina held up her hand, cutting her off with a knowing smile. Save your excuses, she said. The diviner has already revealed your deceit. Chichi's jaw dropped in disbelief at the revelation, her face flushing with embarrassment as the weight of her deception came crashing down upon her. I admit it, Princess, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Elite. All of a sudden, there was a sense of urgency in the air. Princess Amina realized that she had a promise to keep. Without further ado, she dashed off to find Prince Osaboo, her heart racing with excitement at the prospect of finally setting things right. Finding Prince Osaboo in the palace gardens, Princess Amina wasted no time in confessing. Osaboo, I owe you an apology, she declared, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Prince Osage's eyes widened in surprise at the sudden turn of events, his heart pounding with a mixture of confusion and curiosity when he heard the tale. Amina continued, there's something else we need to discuss? And with that, Prince Osaboo began to plan their union, which they wanted to happen as soon as possible. Chichi stewed in her own bitterness over her failed schemes and began to plan for revenge. With an evil laugh that echoed throughout her home, she came up with her final plan: to poison Prince Osaboo's food and get rid of him. If she could not have the prince, Amina would not have him as well. Chichi pressed on with single-minded determination. She had visited the old lady witch doctor once again, and she had given her a lethal poison. This time, she would be sure to follow the instructions. She envisioned the look of horror on Prince Osaboo's face when he took his first bite. Chichi, fueled by her vengeful determination, manages to slip into the palace kitchen under the guise of being the general's daughter. She couldn't contain the wicked smile that spread across her face. She carefully laced the prince's food with the deadly poison, relishing in the thought of finally exacting her revenge. Satisfied with her handiwork, Chichi slipped away from the kitchen and rejoined the festivities, her heart pounding with anticipation as she awaited the inevitable chaos that would ensue. But as fate would have it, a stroke of misfortune intervened, turning Chichi's carefully laid plans on their head. In the excitement that followed, the plates of food became mixed up, and the poison dish meant for Prince Osaboo ended up in front of the general instead. As the unsuspecting general took his first bite, a look of horror crossed Chichi's face as she realized her grave mistake. With a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach, she watched in helpless horror as the general's face contorted in agony, his hands clutching at his throat as he struggled to breathe. Panic spread like wildfire through the palace as the realization of what had transpired sank in. Chaos erupted as servants rushed to the general's aid, their frantic efforts to save him mingling with the shouts and cries of confusion that filled the air. Chichi stood frozen in shock, her heart heavy with guilt and remorse. She had never intended for her vengeful plot to cause harm to anyone but Prince Osaboo, and now, her reckless actions had endangered the life of an innocent man. As the gravity of her actions weighed heavily upon her, Chichi knew that she could no longer run from the consequences of her deeds. With tears streaming down her cheeks, Chichi knew that she could no longer hide from the truth. With trembling hands and a voice choked with emotion, she stepped forward and confessed to her grave mistake, her words echoing in the stunned silence that had fallen over the room. I poisoned the food," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it was meant for Prince Osaboo, not the general. Please, forgive me." Prince Osaboo's eyes blazed with fury at Adesawa's confession, his heart heavy with anger and betrayal. "You fool," he thundered. "You have endangered the life of an innocent man, all for your petty revenge. A man who took you in when you lost both your parents. The general is like a father to you." The palace servants scrambled to summon a medicine man to administer herbs to the stricken general. With each passing moment, the general's condition grew more dire, his life hanging in the balance as the poison wreaked havoc on his body. As the medicine man arrived, his face solemn and his hands steady, he wasted no time in administering the life-saving herbs to the general, his prayers for healing mingling with the hushed whispers of the onlookers gathered around. The herbs took effect and a sigh of relief swept through the room like a gentle breeze. The following morning, the elders met in the palace. Prince Osaboo and the general were there too. Chichi stood before them, her head bowed in shame, as they deliberated her fate. According to the ancient customs of the kingdom, Chichi's actions demanded that a hefty fine be paid to Prince Osaboo for the harm Chichi had caused. It seemed that there was only one viable solution. The general, as Chichi's guardian, would be required to pay the fine on her behalf. The general's heart sank like a stone at the prospect of shouldering such a hefty burden. The elders had decided that 10 cows and 20 goats would be the fine. The general's mind raced with the implications of his adopted daughter's recklessness. But he had to do what was necessary to right the wrongs of the past. With a heavy sigh, the general stepped forward, his voice steady but tinged with sadness. "I will pay the fine," he declared, his words echoing through the chamber like a solemn vow. "For Chichi is like a daughter to me, and I cannot turn my back on her now, no matter the cost." And so, with the general's pledge to pay the fine, the elder's verdict was sealed. Chichi looked at the general, a man who had treated her with so much love and compassion, and vowed to never let such ill feelings lead her to committing such abominable crimes again. Chichi's story highlights the destructive power of jealousy. Her obsession with Prince Osaboo and her envy of Princess Amina blinded her to reason and led her down a path of deceit and betrayal. Jealousy, when left unchecked, can poison the mind and the soul, driving individuals to commit acts of cruelty and malice that they otherwise would not have committed. Instead of fixating on what others have or seeking to tear them down out of envy, we should focus on appreciating our own blessings.